My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. Last Saturday at my father's 65th birthday party, my sister Emma grabbed my crutch right out from under me, sending me crashing to the ground in front of our entire family. "Stop faking it, you're just leeching off Dad's guilt," she screamed, her face twisted with years of accumulated resentment. What happened next would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family and expose a web of lies that had been carefully constructed for over 2 decades. Before we dive into this family nightmare that changed my life forever, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and smash that like button if you're ready for some serious family drama. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory, and trust me, you won't want to miss what my so-called loving family was hiding from me all these years. Growing up, the Mitchell family looked picture-perfect from the outside. Dad owned a successful construction company, Mom was the president of the PTA, and we lived in a beautiful colonial house on Maple Street with a white picket fence that might as well have been torn from a magazine cover. Emma, 2 years older than me, was the golden child captain of the cheerleading squad, valedictorian, full scholarship to Northwestern. I was the artistic one, spending hours drawing and painting in my room, dreaming of attending art school. Everything changed when I was 8 years old. What started as occasional leg pain during soccer practice gradually worsened into debilitating episodes that left me bedridden for days. Doctor after doctor ran tests, conducted MRIs, and scratched their heads. Finally, Dr. Rodriguez at Children's Hospital diagnosed me with juvenile arthritis, a condition that would require ongoing treatment and significantly impact my mobility. The diagnosis divided our family in ways I didn't understand at the time. Dad immediately went into protective mode, installing handrails throughout the house, buying me the most comfortable bed money could buy, and making sure I had everything I needed. Mom seemed overwhelmed but supportive, driving me to countless appointments and researching treatments online. Emma, however, grew increasingly resentful of the attention my condition demanded. "Sarah gets everything," she complained to her friends, not knowing I could hear her from my bedroom window. "New shoes because her feet hurt, a special chair for homework, and Mom cancels my sleepovers whenever Sarah has a bad day." I wanted to tell her I'd trade places with her in a heartbeat, that I'd give anything to run and play without pain, but the words never came. High school intensified the family dynamics. While Emma excelled in everything she touched, I struggled to maintain decent grades while managing my condition. Some days the pain was so severe I couldn't hold a pencil, let alone concentrate on calculus. Dad hired tutors and bought me a laptop with voice-to-text software. Emma saw it as more special treatment. "It's not fair that Sarah gets extensions on every assignment," she argued during one particularly heated family dinner. "Other kids don't get those advantages." Mom tried to explain that accommodations weren't advantages, but Emma had already made up her mind. In her worldview, I was the favorite child who manipulated my condition for sympathy and special treatment. The worst part wasn't even Emma's resentment, it was the doubt it planted in my own mind. During my darkest moments, usually late at night when the pain was unbearable, I wondered if she was right. Was I being dramatic? Was I using my arthritis as an excuse? The guilt ate away at me, making the physical pain somehow more bearable than the emotional turmoil. College applications brought everything to a head. Emma's acceptance to Northwestern was celebrated with a family dinner at our fanciest restaurant. When I received my acceptance to the Art Institute of Chicago with a partial scholarship, the response was lukewarm "congratulations," followed by Dad's immediate concern about how I'd manage in a big city with my condition. "Maybe you should consider the community college instead," Mom suggested gently. "It's closer to home and you could commute." Emma rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out of her head. "There she goes again," Emma muttered under her breath, "making everything about her condition." Dad shot her a warning look, but the damage was done. Even my achievements were somehow diminished by my arthritis in Emma's mind. Despite the family tension, I was determined to prove I could succeed independently. I moved to Chicago, found a small apartment near campus, and threw myself into my studies. The first year was brutal. Managing my condition while adapting to college life nearly broke me. But I persevered, making the dean's list and even landing a part-time internship at a local gallery. Emma, meanwhile, graduated summa cum laude and immediately landed a high-paying job at a prestigious consulting firm. She moved back home temporarily to save money, which meant every family gathering became an opportunity for comparison. Her success versus my struggle, her independence versus my need for occasional help, her bright future versus my uncertain path as an artist with a chronic condition. The resentment festered for years, poisoning every family interaction. Emma's comments became sharper, more calculated. She'd make jokes about my convenient flare-ups whenever family obligations arose. She'd question why I needed Dad's financial help with medical bills when she was completely self-sufficient. She'd suggest that maybe I was too comfortable relying on family support instead of pushing myself harder. After graduating from art school, I moved back home temporarily while searching for jobs and affordable healthcare options. The Chicago winters had been particularly harsh on my joints, and my doctor recommended I consider relocating somewhere warmer. Emma saw my return as proof of her theories about my dependence and manipulation. "Couldn't hack it on your own, huh?" she said the day I moved my boxes back into my childhood bedroom. "Funny how your arthritis got worse right when your savings ran out." Her words stung because they carried a grain of truth wrapped in malice. My condition had worsened, but so had my financial situation as a recent graduate with student loans and medical debt. Dad tried to mediate between us, but his efforts often backfired. When he offered to help me buy a car with hand controls to make driving easier, Emma exploded. "She's 26 years old, Dad. When are you going to stop enabling her?" When he helped me move into a small apartment across town, Emma accused him of playing favorites. "You didn't help me with my security deposit when I moved out." The thing was, Dad hadn't helped Emma because she hadn't needed help. Her consulting job came with a generous signing bonus and relocation package. But Emma's logic didn't account for the differences in our circumstances, only the differences in our treatment. Mom tried to stay neutral, but I could see the stress wearing on her. Family dinners became minefields of passive-aggressive comments and uncomfortable silences. Emma would make pointed remarks about personal responsibility while I struggled to cut my food with swollen fingers. She'd talk about her latest promotion or business trip while I shared news about freelance design projects that barely covered my expenses. The breaking point came during Christmas 2 years ago. I'd been having a particularly bad flare-up and needed to use a wheelchair for mobility. Emma took one look at me and scoffed. "Oh, now it's a wheelchair. What's next, Sarah? Are you going to start claiming disability benefits too?" Dad's face turned purple. "That's enough, Emma. Your sister is in pain." "Is she, though?" Emma challenged. "Because it's awfully convenient that her pain gets worse every time there's something she doesn't want to do. Remember when she missed my college graduation because of a flare-up? Or when she couldn't help move Grandma into assisted living because her joints were too stiff?" The accusations felt like physical blows. Yes, I had missed her graduation, but I'd been hospitalized with a severe flare-up that required IV steroids. Yes, I couldn't help with Grandma's move, but I'd been recovering from joint replacement surgery. Emma had rewritten history, transforming my genuine medical crises into calculated manipulations. "You think I chose this?" I asked, my voice shaking with hurt and anger. "You think I wanted to spend my 20s in and out of hospitals while you were building your career? You think I enjoy watching everyone else live their lives while I'm stuck managing a condition that might cripple me completely by the plan? Time, I'm 40. I think you've gotten very comfortable playing the victim," Emma shot back. "And I think Dad's guilt about your condition has created a monster who can't function in the real world." That night, I overheard Emma talking to Mom in the kitchen. "She's going to drain Dad's savings with her medical bills and her inability to support herself," Emma said. "Someone needs to stop enabling her before she destroys his retirement." "Emma, that's not fair," Mom protested weakly. Sarah's condition is real, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Dr. Rodriguez explained a lot of things 20 years ago, Mom. Kids grow out of juvenile arthritis all the time. Has anyone actually verified that Sarah still has it, or are we just taking her word for it? The seed of doubt had been planted, and I could see it growing in Mom's eyes. Emma's successful career and apparent independence gave her words weight. She was the practical one, the achiever, the daughter who didn't need anything from anyone. If she questioned my condition, maybe there was something to question. From that moment on, I felt like I was under constant surveillance. Emma would watch me carefully during family gatherings, taking note of when I used my cane versus when I didn't. She'd comment if I seemed to move better on some days than others, as if chronic illness followed a predictable pattern. She started asking pointed questions about my medications, my doctor's appointments, my treatment plans. "If your arthritis is so severe, why aren't you on disability?" she asked during one particularly tense conversation. "Why are you still trying to freelance instead of getting the benefits you're entitled to?" I tried to explain that I wanted to work, that maintaining independence was important to me, that disability benefits weren't guaranteed even with a legitimate condition. But Emma had already decided I was a fraud who was too proud or too greedy to admit it. The final straw came 6 months ago, when Dad mentioned he was considering early retirement. Emma immediately assumed it was because of my medical expenses and confronted him directly. "You can't retire early because Sarah can't support herself, Dad. That's not fair to you or Mom." Dad tried to explain that his decision was based on multiple factors, including his own health and desire to travel with Mom. But Emma had connected dots that didn't necessarily connect, creating a narrative where I was the obstacle to our parents' happiness and security. Dad's 65th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration of family and milestones. Mom had spent weeks planning the perfect gathering at their favorite restaurant, complete with photo slideshows and speeches from each of us kids. Emma flew in from Boston, where she'd recently been promoted to senior consultant, and I'd prepared a special photo album chronicling Dad's construction projects over the years. The evening started well enough. Dad seemed genuinely touched by the turnout. Cousins, family, friends, and longtime employees from his construction company filled the private dining room. Emma was in her element, networking with Dad's business associates and charming everyone with stories about her latest project, managing the renovation of a historic hotel. I tried to stay positive despite the persistent ache in my knees from the morning's physical therapy session. I'd been making real progress lately, working with a new rheumatologist who'd adjusted my treatment plan. Some days were better than others, but overall I felt more optimistic about managing my condition than I had in years. The trouble started during dinner when I excused myself to take my evening medication. Emma followed me to the restroom, cornering me by the sinks with an expression I'd learned to dread over the years. "Still popping pills, I see," she said, watching me organize my daily medication dispenser. "What are you up to now? 10 different prescriptions." 15. "It's a complex condition, Emma," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The rheumatologist explained that combination therapy is often necessary to prevent joint damage and maintain mobility. "Convenient," she said, examining her lipstick in the mirror. "Very convenient that your complex condition requires such expensive treatment." I looked up those medications, Sarah. "Do you know what Dad's insurance pays out annually just for your prescriptions?" The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Emma had been tracking my medical expenses, building a case against me in her mind. "I don't choose to be sick, Emma. I'd gladly give up every medication if it meant being healthy." "Would you, though?" she challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've built your entire identity around being sick. Poor Sarah, with her tragic condition. Poor Sarah, who can't work full-time. Poor Sarah, who needs everyone's help and sympathy." I felt the familiar burn of tears behind my eyes, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I've never asked for sympathy. I've asked for understanding and occasional accommodation which any decent human being would provide for someone they supposedly love. Love isn't enabling someone's dysfunction, Emma shot back. And love definitely isn't watching your father sacrifice his retirement because his adult daughter can't support herself. When we returned to the table, the tension was obvious despite our attempts to smile and act normal. Dad was in the middle of thanking everyone for coming when Emma stood up abruptly, raising her wineglass with a brittle smile. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, and the room fell silent. "To my father, who has always been incredibly generous with his time, money, and love, sometimes too generous." Her eyes found mine across the table. "Dad, you've taught us the value of hard work and independence. You've shown us that success comes from perseverance and personal responsibility. Some of us learned those lessons better than others." The room grew uncomfortable as guests sensed the undercurrent of hostility in Emma's words. Dad looked confused, Mom appeared mortified, and I felt like I was watching a car accident in slow motion. "Emma, maybe we should save the speeches for later," Mom suggested diplomatically. "No, Mom, I think this needs to be said." Emma's voice grew louder, fueled by wine and years of resentment. "We're all here celebrating Dad's 65th birthday, but what we should really be talking about is how he's being taken advantage of by someone who's perfectly capable of taking care of herself but chooses not to." "Emma, stop," Dad said firmly, but she was beyond reasoning. "Stop enabling her, Dad," Emma's voice cracked with emotion. "She's 28 years old and still needs Daddy to pay her medical bills and cover her rent when freelance work is slow. When does it end? When you're 70, 75, when you've spent your entire retirement fund on someone who won't help herself." I tried to stand up to leave, but Emma's next words stopped me cold. "And don't think we don't all see through the act," she continued, her voice rising to near shouting levels. "The convenient flare-ups. The dramatic symptoms whenever there's something you don't want to do. The way your condition mysteriously gets worse whenever Dad mentions cutting back on support. That's when she did it." Emma reached across the table and grabbed my crutch, the one I'd been using more frequently since my recent knee surgery, and held it above her head, like evidence in a criminal trial. "Stop faking it, you're just leeching off Dad's guilt," she screamed, and in her anger she yanked the crutch away from me completely. Without the support, I crashed to the floor hard, my surgically repaired knee twisting at an unnatural angle as I fell. The pain was immediate and excruciating, but the humiliation was worse. 30 people watched as I lay on the restaurant floor gasping in agony while my sister stood over me holding the mobility aid she'd just weaponized against me. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad was the first to move, dropping to his knees beside me, with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, honey, don't try to move. Someone call 911. This is where our story takes a turn that nobody, especially Emma, saw coming. Because what happened next would expose secrets that had been buried for over 20 years. Secrets that would make Emma's cruel accusations look like child's play. Stay tuned, because the truth about my condition and my family's past is about to blow this whole situation wide open in ways that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about family loyalty and medical fraud. The ambulance ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and pain medication, but what I remember most clearly was Dad's face. He held my hand the entire way, whispering apologies that seemed to carry more weight than a simple accident warranted. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way." Find out what his words didn't make sense through the haze of pain and shock, but something in his tone suggested this went deeper than Emma's public humiliation. At the hospital emergency room, doctors confirmed that my fall had caused significant damage to my recently repaired knee, requiring immediate surgery to prevent permanent mobility loss. While I was being prepped for surgery, I caught fragments of a heated argument between Dad and Emma in the hallway. Emma's voice was shrill with defensive anger. "I didn't mean for her to get hurt. I just wanted her to stop manipulating everyone. Dad's response was low and furious. "You have no idea what you've done, no idea what this family has been protecting her from. The surgery went well, but recovery would be long and complicated." Dr. Martinez, the orthopedic surgeon, explained that my existing arthritis had complicated the repair work significantly. "Your sister mentioned that family members have questioned the severity of your condition," she said carefully. "I want you to know that your joint damage is extensive and consistent with long-term inflammatory arthritis. There's no question about the legitimacy of your condition." It felt simultaneously vindicating and heartbreaking that a stranger had to defend my medical reality to my own family. But Dr. Martinez wasn't finished. "In fact, I'm surprised your symptoms aren't more severe given the level of joint deterioration I observed during surgery. You've been managing this condition remarkably well." When I was moved to a private room, Dad was waiting with an expression I'd never seen before, guilt mixed with determination and what looked like fear. Mom sat in the corner chair, her face red and puffy from crying. Emma was notably absent. "Where's Emma?" I asked, though part of me was relieved not to face her immediately. "Your sister went back to her hotel," Dad said carefully. "We need to talk, Sarah. There are things about your condition, about our family that you deserve to know." Mom made a small sound of protest. "Robert, maybe we should wait until she's stronger." "She's plenty strong," Dad replied, his voice filled with pride and regret. "She's been stronger than any of us realized. Stronger than she should have had to be." Dad pulled his chair closer to my bed and took my hand. "Sarah, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear, but you need to understand why Emma's accusations were so wrong and why they've made me realize we can't keep protecting her from the truth anymore." He took a deep breath and began. "Your arthritis wasn't caused by juvenile arthritis, sweetheart. It was caused by medical malpractice when you were 7 years old." The words hit me like physical blows. "What do you mean, you had routine surgery to remove your appendix?" Dad continued, his voice heavy with 20 years of suppressed guilt. "It should have been simple outpatient procedure. But the anesthesiologist made a mistake. A big mistake." Mom was crying again, but Dad pushed forward. "During the surgery, you were given a contaminated injection that introduced bacteria directly into your bloodstream. You developed septic arthritis, a severe infection that attacked multiple joints throughout your body. You nearly died, Sarah. You spent 6 weeks in the ICU fighting for your life." My mind struggled to process this information. I had vague memories of being very sick when I was little, but I'd always been told it was related to my arthritis diagnosis. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we were afraid," Dad admitted. "Afraid of how it would affect you to know that your condition was preventable. Afraid of the legal battles and publicity. Afraid of how Emma would react to learning that her sister's special treatment was the result of someone else's negligence." "The settlement," Mom whispered from her corner. "The medical malpractice settlement has been paying for your treatment all these years. Every doctor's appointment, every medication, every accommodation we've made, it's been funded by the money we received when we sued the hospital." The revelation was staggering. All of Emma's resentment about my expensive medical care, all her accusations about draining Dad's finances, all her theories about manipulation and freeloading, completely wrong. Not only was my condition legitimate and severe, but its treatment wasn't even coming from family funds. "Emma doesn't know," I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Dad shook his head. "We decided early on that it was better for her not to know. We thought it would be easier for both of you if we just normalized your condition as much as possible. Let Emma think your arthritis was genetic or environmental, something that just happened. But that made her think I was getting special treatment for no reason," I realized. "She thought you were choosing me over her, when really, you were just managing a legal obligation." "It wasn't about legal obligation, honey," Mom said through her tears. "It was about making sure you had the best possible life despite what that doctor's mistake took from you. The settlement money was specifically designated for your care. We couldn't have used it for Emma even if we'd wanted to." Dad stood up and walked to the window. The anesthesiologist lost his license. The hospital implemented new safety protocols. We got a settlement that ensures you'll have medical coverage for life. But none of that gave you back your childhood or your health. Does Emma know now? I asked. She will, Dad said firmly. We told her to meet us here tomorrow morning and we're going to explain everything. The truth about your condition, the malpractice case, the settlement fund, and why her behavior tonight was so completely out of line. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the financial burden Emma had accused me of creating was imaginary, but sadness that our family had spent 20 years built on this foundation of partial truths and protected information. There's more, Dad continued. The settlement included a clause about privacy and non-disclosure, which is part of why we've been so secretive. But our lawyer says that Emma's public accusations tonight could potentially be considered defamatory, especially in front of Dad's business associates and clients. You're not suggesting we sue Emma? I asked, horrified at the thought. No, of course not, Mom said quickly. But we want her to understand the seriousness of what she's done. Not just the physical harm from your fall, but the character assassination based on completely false assumptions. As the days passed in the hospital, I had time to process the magnitude of what I'd learned. My entire sense of identity had been shaped by a story that was only half true. Yes, I had severe arthritis that required ongoing treatment. But it wasn't a random genetic lottery or environmental trigger, it was the direct result of someone else's professional negligence. More importantly, every financial anxiety I'd carried about being a burden on my family was based on false information. The settlement fund was substantial enough to cover my medical needs for life with careful management. Dad's construction business was successful in its own right. Emma's career achievements had never been overshadowed by my medical expenses, because my medical expenses came from a completely different source. When Emma finally visited 3 days after the birthday disaster, she looked smaller, somehow deflated and uncertain in a way I'd never seen her before. She'd clearly been crying, and her usual polished appearance was replaced by sweatpants and an old college t-shirt. I'm sorry, she said, before even sitting down. Dad told me everything. About the malpractice, the settlement, the septic arthritis. All of it. I studied her face, looking for signs of the sister I'd grown up with beneath the years of accumulated resentment and misunderstanding. What did he tell you exactly? Emma's composure cracked completely. That you nearly died when you were 7. That your arthritis was caused by a doctor's mistake, not genetics. That the money for your treatment comes from a malpractice settlement, not Dad's savings. That I've been completely wrong about everything for 20 years. She collapsed into the visitor's chair, her head in her hands. God, Sarah, I've been such a horrible sister. I accused you of faking a condition that almost killed you. I resented you for getting money that was legally yours because of medical malpractice. I've been angry at you for 20 years because no one told me the truth. The conversation with Emma lasted 4 hours and covered 20 years of misunderstood family dynamics. For the first time since we were children, we talked honestly about our perspectives and experiences, without the filter of resentment or assumed knowledge. Emma explained how she'd always felt like the less important daughter watching me receive what appeared to be preferential treatment, without understanding the medical necessity behind it. She described feeling invisible during my worst flare-ups when family attention naturally focused on my immediate needs. I remember being 10 years old and having to cancel my birthday party because you were in the hospital, Emma said, her voice thick with old hurt. Mom explained that you were very sick, but I didn't understand why your sickness always seemed more important than anything I was going through. I had my own memories of that hospitalization, a severe reaction to a new medication that required emergency treatment. From my perspective, I was fighting to function normally, while Emma effortlessly excelled at everything she touched. I'd envied her health, her achievements, her apparently easy relationship with our parents. I thought you hated me because I was sick, I admitted. Every time I needed help or accommodation, you'd get that look on your face like I was ruining your life on purpose. I thought you were manipulating Mom and Dad, Emma replied. I thought you'd learned that being sick got you attention and special treatment, so you played it up whenever it was convenient. The conversation was painful, but necessary. We were both grieving the sister relationship we'd never had, because of secrets and misunderstandings. Emma had spent years resenting me for advantages that weren't really advantages, while I'd spent years feeling guilty for needs I couldn't control. Why didn't Mom and Dad just tell us the truth from the beginning? Emma asked. It was a fair question that I'd been pondering since Dad's revelation. I think they were trying to protect both of us, I said slowly. They didn't want me to grow up feeling like a victim of malpractice, and they didn't want you to feel guilty about being healthy when your sister was suffering because of someone else's mistake. But the secrecy made everything worse, Emma pointed out. I spent 20 years thinking you were Dad's favorite, and I was the afterthought. You spent 20 years thinking you were a financial burden on the family. Neither of those things was true. Dad and Mom joined us that afternoon, and we had our first honest family conversation in decades. Dad explained more details about the malpractice case, the hospital's admission of guilt, and the structured settlement that would provide for my medical needs indefinitely. The money isn't unlimited, Dad clarified. It requires careful management and periodic review. But it's specifically designated for Sarah's medical care, physical therapy, adaptive equipment, and related expenses. We couldn't have touched it for anything else, even if we'd wanted to. Mom revealed that they'd actually consulted family therapists about whether to tell us the truth, particularly as we got older. Every professional we spoke with had different advice, she said. Some thought honesty was always best. Others worried about the psychological impact on both of you. What changed your mind? I asked. Dad looked at Emma directly. Watching your sister nearly destroy you emotionally with accusations that were completely false. Realizing that our attempt to protect both of you had actually created a situation where one daughter was torturing the other based on lies. Emma flinched at the word torturing, but she didn't protest. I need to make this right, she said quietly. Not just with Sarah, but with everyone who was at the birthday party. I humiliated her in front of 30 people based on assumptions that were completely wrong. How do you want to handle that? I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. I want to tell the truth, Emma said firmly. All of it. I want people to know that your condition is real, that you're not a financial burden on the family, and that I was completely wrong to suggest otherwise. I want them to know that you're actually one of the strongest people I know for managing everything you've been dealing with. Mom started crying again, but these were different tears, relief and hope instead of pain and regret. Girls, we should have done this years ago. We should have trusted both of you with the truth, instead of trying to manage everyone's reactions. The next few days brought a series of difficult but necessary conversations. Emma called Dad's business partners who had attended the party, explaining that her accusations had been based on misinformation and asking them to disregard anything she'd said about my character or circumstances. She also reached out to family members and friends, taking full responsibility for her behavior and clarifying the true nature of my condition and our family's financial arrangements. It was a humbling process for someone accustomed to being right about everything, but Emma approached it with the same determination she brought to her professional projects. I'm not just apologizing, she told me during one of our daily conversations. I'm actively correcting the record. Anyone who heard me accuse you of faking or freeloading is going to hear the truth, even if it makes me look like a complete idiot. The physical therapy for my knee was progressing well, but the emotional healing was happening faster than anyone expected. For the first time in 20 years, Emma and I were building a relationship based on honesty instead of assumptions. She started visiting regularly, sometimes just to keep me company during long recovery sessions. I missed so much, she admitted one afternoon, while helping me practice walking with my new knee brace. I missed knowing who you really are because I was so busy resenting who I thought you were. We both missed out, I replied. I could have used a big sister who understood what I was going through, instead of one who seemed to hate me for going through it. Emma stopped adjusting my brace and looked up at me. I never hated you, Sarah. I hated what I thought you represented evidence that I wasn't important enough to deserve the same level of care and attention. But I was wrong about everything. As my discharge date approached, our family began discussing how to move forward with our new understanding. Emma had taken extended leave from her consulting job to help with my recovery, a gesture that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. I want to be the sister you deserved all along, she told me the night before I went home. I want to understand your condition and support your goals, and celebrate your achievements without resentment or judgment. And I want to be the sister who doesn't make you feel guilty for being healthy and successful, I replied. We can't change the past 20 years, but we can definitely do better going forward. But our story wasn't over yet. In fact, the biggest revelation was still coming, one that would make everything we'd learned about family loyalty and medical truth seem simple by comparison. Because Emma's investigation into my medical history had uncovered something that none of us, not even the original malpractice lawyers, had ever suspected. 3 months into my recovery, Emma's perfectionist tendencies led her to request copies of all my medical records from the malpractice case. As someone who made her living analyzing complex business situations, she wanted to fully understand what had happened to me and ensure that the settlement terms were being properly managed. I spent 20 years questioning your condition without ever actually looking at the medical evidence, she explained, while organizing stacks of documents at my kitchen table. I owe it to both of us to understand exactly what you've been dealing with. What Emma discovered while reviewing those files would expose a conspiracy that went far beyond a single doctor's mistake. Hidden in the hundreds of pages of medical records, depositions, and legal correspondence was evidence of a systematic cover-up that had protected the real culprit for over 2 decades. Sarah, you need to see this, Emma said one morning, her voice tight with controlled anger. The anesthesiologist who supposedly made the mistake he was covering for someone else. According to Emma's analysis of the depositions, Dr. William Chen had initially claimed full responsibility for my septic arthritis, stating that he had used a contaminated injection during my appendectomy. But buried in the supplemental documents was a recording of a conversation between Dr. Chen and the hospital's legal team that told a very different story. He was protecting Dr. Patricia Morrison, the head of pediatric surgery, Emma explained, playing the scratchy audio recording on her laptop. Morrison was the one who insisted on using a non-standard protocol during your surgery. She was the one who demanded that Chen use a specific medication cocktail that she'd been experimenting with. The recording revealed that Dr. Morrison had been conducting unauthorized research on pediatric patients using modified anesthesia protocols without proper oversight or parental consent. When her experimental approach led to my life-threatening infection, she convinced Dr. Chen to take responsibility in exchange for a substantial payment and her guarantee that his medical license would be protected in another state. She sacrificed Chen's career to save her own, Emma said, her investigative instincts fully engaged. But she also made sure he landed softly with a new position at a hospital in Oregon, where he worked for another 15 years before retiring. The implications were staggering. Dr. Morrison had continued practicing pediatric surgery for 2 decades after nearly killing me with her unauthorized experimentation. How many other children had been subjected to her research without their parents' knowledge or consent? Emma had already contacted our original malpractice attorney, who was shocked by the new evidence. This changes everything, lawyer Rebecca Martinez explained during our emergency meeting. If Dr. Morrison was conducting unauthorized human experimentation, the statute of limitations doesn't apply. We're talking about potential criminal charges, not just medical malpractice. But the story got even more twisted. Emma's deep dive into Dr. Morrison's career revealed that she had indeed continued her unauthorized research, and at least 6 other children had suffered serious complications from her experimental protocols. Unlike my case, these incidents had been successfully covered up with non-disclosure agreements and sealed settlements. She's been systemically abusing her position for decades, Emma said, spreading out a timeline she'd created tracking Morrison's career and the documented complications. She would find vulnerable families, immigrants, single parents, people without resources to fight back, and when her experiments went wrong, she'd offer quick, quiet settlements with strict non-disclosure clauses. The revelation that my suffering was part of a larger pattern of medical abuse was simultaneously validating and horrifying. Validating because it confirmed that my condition was not only legitimate but the result of deliberate misconduct. Horrifying because it meant other families had endured similar ordeals while the perpetrator continued practicing medicine. Emma had transformed from my harshest critic into my fiercest advocate, using her analytical skills and professional network to build an airtight case against Dr. Morrison. She contacted investigative journalists, medical ethics boards, and law enforcement agencies, methodically documenting the pattern of abuse and cover-up. "I spent 20 years thinking you were manipulating our family," Emma told me, while preparing her presentation for the state medical board. "Now I'm going to spend however long it takes making sure the person who actually manipulated the medical system faces consequences." The case exploded into national news when federal prosecutors announced charges against Dr. Morrison for conducting unauthorized human experimentation, falsifying medical records, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The hospital where my surgery had taken place faced additional charges for institutional cover-up and enabling ongoing medical abuse. During the press conference announcing the charges, Emma stood beside me as I read a statement on behalf of all Morrison's victims. "For over 20 years, families like mine have lived with the consequences of Dr. Morrison's criminal conduct. We've blamed ourselves, questioned our children's symptoms, and struggled with medical conditions that could have been prevented if the medical community had prioritized patient safety over institutional reputation. The vindication was overwhelming but not entirely satisfying. No amount of legal justice could give me back the healthy childhood I'd lost, or repair the family relationships damaged by decades of secrecy and misunderstanding. But there was something deeply meaningful about finally having the complete truth and seeing the real perpetrator held accountable." Emma's investigation had also uncovered financial irregularities in how our original settlement had been managed. The hospital had been using investment returns from settlement funds to pay legal fees for defending other Morrison cases, essentially making victims subsidize the cover-up of their own abuse. "They've been stealing from you for years," Emma explained, showing me the forensic accounting she'd commissioned. "The settlement fund should be worth nearly twice what it is now if it had been properly managed without these unauthorized deductions. The additional financial recovery was substantial, but more importantly, it demonstrated that Emma's investigation had exposed corruption at multiple levels of the medical and legal systems. Her work was being used as a model for investigating similar cases of institutional medical abuse across the country." As we sat in the courthouse after Dr. Morrison's sentencing hearing, she received 12 years in federal prison and was permanently banned from practicing medicine. Emma turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry it took me 20 years to fight for you instead of fighting against you," she said. "I'm sorry I couldn't see that you were the victim of something horrible instead of the cause of family problems." "We both learned something important," I replied, watching federal marshals escort Morrison away in handcuffs. "We learned that the truth always matters, even when it's complicated or painful. And we learned that family loyalty means standing up for each other against real threats, not against each other." The experience had fundamentally changed our family dynamics. Dad and Mom had acknowledged their mistakes in keeping secrets, and they were working with a family therapist to develop better communication strategies. Emma had moved back to Chicago to be closer to our family. and had started a consulting practice focused on medical ethics and institutional accountability. I want to use my skills to prevent other families from going through what we went through, she explained. I want to help hospitals and medical systems build better oversight and transparency so that doctors like Morrison can't hide behind institutional protection. As for me, I was finally free from the burden of wondering whether my condition was legitimate or whether I was truly a burden on my family. The settlement recovery had provided enough financial security for me to focus on my art career without worrying about medical expenses, and Emma's investigation had given me a sense of purpose in helping other medical abuse victims find justice. Now, as I reflect on this incredible journey from family betrayal to ultimate justice, I have to ask you all some tough questions. Have you ever had a family member who doubted your struggles or questioned your truth? How did you handle the situation when someone you loved refused to believe something important about your experience? And what would you do if you discovered that years of family conflict were based on secrets and lies that could have been resolved with honest communication? I want to hear your stories in the comments below, because I've learned that family relationships are complicated. And sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are also capable of fighting for us the hardest when they finally understand the truth. Drop a comment sharing your own experiences with family loyalty, medical struggles, or situations where the truth came out in unexpected ways. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people find it who might be dealing with similar family dynamics or medical challenges. Subscribe to my channel, because I'll be sharing more updates about the ongoing legal cases and my advocacy work with other medical abuse survivors. And don't forget to share this video with anyone who might need to hear about the importance of family communication and standing up for the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Thank you all for taking this journey with me, and for all the supportive comments you've left throughout this series. Your encouragement gave me the strength to keep telling my story even when it was painful to relive these experiences. I hope my story helps you remember that family relationships can be healed, that medical truth matters, and that justice is possible, even when it takes decades to achieve. Remember that chronic illness is real, family dynamics are complicated, and sometimes the people who seem strongest are fighting battles we can't see. Be kind to each other, ask questions when something doesn't make sense, and never be afraid to stand up for the truth when it really matters. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you love.